Good evening. You are not responding. So once we are born in this world, we have to live. And not only we have to live, but we have to live nicely. Because as an inborn quality, inborn need, we all want happiness, do not want suffering. I always talk about this one. This is so important. We all want happiness, do not want suffering. Not only that, we want the most long-lasting happiness and peace. Not less than that. That's our demand. And this wish to have long-lasting happiness and peace, as I have always been saying, is not something that you have learned from Buddhism. It's not something that you have learned from any religious tradition. It's the way you are. And I always give this example that after the birth of the child, the first thing the child does is crying, not laughing, not smiling. And by crying, the child is asking for something. And what do you think the child is asking? A long teaching on Buddhism? No. A long teaching on any other religion? No. Certainly not. So the child is definitely asking for mother's care, affection and love. And also what the child is asking is not only love and affection from the mother or whoever is taking care of the child, but that child is asking for unconditional love. This is not something you need to read Buddhism to understand this. Although Buddhism is very much saying things that is there in our very nature. So the child, by crying, asking for somebody's love, and that too unconditional love. Because the child has nothing to give back at that point of the time. So at that point of the time, when you are in a desperate situation, you need somebody's uncalculating, unconditional love and affection. That's how we are born. So the important thing is that by extension, not only that was the need of the child, but in the case of all of us, the love and affection that we need to develop is unconditional love and affection. Because there is hardly anybody who is not suffering from either this or that. Somebody may be a president, a prime minister, a great lama, whatever title, name that person may have, but so long as one is born in this samsara, there is this problem, there is difficulty. And that person also is in need of unconditional love and affection. And the good thing with this unconditional love and affection is if you learn to give this unconditional love and affection to others, not only others will benefit, but you will really get deep down satisfaction. Because you are not doing a business. The ordinary, the familial relationship or other relationship based on the so-called love, mixed with attachment, support, is conditional love. Love in the form of business. You take care of me, I'll take care of you. You love me, I love you. You have compassion to me, I have compassion to you. As soon as you stop that love, affection, compassion to me, I'll also stop. That's business. Because if you look at yourself, for example, you take care of yourself to the best of your ability, although you are not also even very good in that. The things you eat, the things you do, you are not very good in that. You don't know how to take care of yourself, also unfortunately. But still you are trying your best to look after yourself. And if somebody out of the blue comes and asks this very unexpected, strange question, saying that I have seen you, doing so many things for yourself, cooking for yourself, washing your clothes, sleeping, taking rest, So many things you are doing for yourself. Why you are doing so many things, so many of these things for yourself? Somebody, as I was saying, somebody unexpectedly asks you this strange question. Then what will be your answer? If you answer this by saying, I take care of myself because I'm president of this country, or I'm a professor, or I'm a Tibetan, whatever, that you can give all kind of answers, but that is not the correct answer. So at the end of the day, the correct answer is, I take care of myself because, not because I'm this, that, I'm great, I'm rich, not that. I take care of myself because I want happiness and do not want suffering. In your case, I take care of myself because I want happiness, do not want suffering. You need to remember this when you talk about helping others. You take care of yourself because you want happiness, not suffering. It's only because of this. Not that you have been so kind to yourself, you have been so nice to yourself. Not such a reason. And when it comes to helping yourself, you don't expect anything in return. For example, when you take lunch and then after having offered lunch to yourself, do you say thank you? And then take breakfast, thank you. Do you say that to yourself? You don't have to expect that thank you. You don't say that because it's something that is important, something that must be done. You want happiness, do not want suffering. So that's good enough reason to take care of yourself unconditionally without expecting thank you. So similarly, what is being taught in Buddhism, especially in this kind of text, is they try to show this unconditional love and affection to others. Therefore, it is important to cultivate, noble attitudes like compassion, loving kindness, bodhicitta, and so on. That's the reason. That's the reason. The main reason why human beings are able to remain healthy and flourish is love, not hatred, not anger, not jealousy. Very clear. Scientifically, we can prove that. So when we say take care of yourself or cultivate these positive qualities, we are saying this simply because this is what is good for you, temporarily and also in the long run. And one that obstructs, hinders the development of such good minds is the negative emotions, the afflictive emotions. Afflictive emotions are those emotions which, when arises in your mind, disturbs you completely, agitates you completely, and disturbs your peace of mind. So it is again common sense that whether you want calmness of mind or disturbed mind, it's very clear, hardly needs any explanation. So therefore it is important to develop very good conviction towards these teachings and then try to implement it, practice it. So therefore yesterday we discussed that having generated this very precious mind, bodhicitta, it is not at all good to give up the practice of the precepts after having cultivated bodhicitta. So in the next verse, the verse number 8, it says, if you give up this bodhicitta, then this is one of the heaviest infraction or violation of the precepts. This for a bodhisattva is the heaviest of downfalls or infractions or breakage of commitments. For should it ever happen, the welfare of all will be weakened. So that's the reason. When we develop bodhicitta, we are saying, how nice if I become Buddha for the benefit of all sentient beings. It's a great mind. How nice if I'm able to benefit all sentient beings. Now if you stop this practice, this mind and the precepts of this mind, then you are abandoning helping others. So that is a grave mistake, a big violation of your precepts. Because the very purpose of your life is not for eating and sleeping. It's definitely, whether you are making your life meaningful or not, is how much you are really able to make other sentient beings happy or not. And His Holiness the Dalai Lama says that in your life, if you are able to help at least 10-20 people, then your journey on this earth is meaningful. If you could not do that, it doesn't really matter you become a billionaire or whatever, it doesn't matter. You came into this world with nothing. When you go, you will go with nothing. So in between, if you accumulate a lot, so what is there? Nothing. So long as your wealth, your knowledge, your capacity, your efficiency, so long as this does not become useful, does not benefit others, it's of no use. It's really of no use at all. So therefore, not only your abandoning the practice of bodhicitta, but also when you see some other people doing something good to other, when somebody is trying to benefit others, never try to hinder and obstruct that. In our regular daily practice, is very important. If you see somebody doing something good, if it is possible, give your helping hand. Encourage that person. Wonderful, you are doing this. Wonderful, you are removing the rubbish around the library. This is wonderful. I'll also join you and help you clean it, you see. Encourage such practice. Instead of saying, he wants to prove that he is a good man. He has no other thing to do, so he's doing, Sometimes we do say things like that, you see. If you find somebody doing some meditation prayer near the temple, then you make a sarcastic remark, he wants to become a monk. She wants to become a nun. You are going to become Buddha very soon. Never ever say things like that. If you can't do, okay, it's your problem or it's your decision. At least let others do good things. It's really, really important, because it's a very big mistake and big sin. If you yourself is unable to benefit others, when somebody is doing beneficial activity, if you become an obstruction, that's what this verse is primarily saying. Because the Bodhisattvas, what they are doing is to benefit others. So if you give up this mind, you are saying that I will not be able to help them. This is one of the worst decisions that you can make in your life. So in your life, you have to say that based on my own limited capacity, I may not be able to do big things, but based on my own limited capacity, I'll try my best to help others. Fair, good enough. And believe me, you can do great many things even if you don't have much with you. When we talk about helping others, it's not talking about distributing money. It's not just distributing money and wealth. It means if somebody is feeling sad, at least smiling, giving a helping hand, saying hello, good morning. You create an environment, you create an atmosphere where everybody feels home. That's important, you see. And if you forget this ordinary decency, good human behavior, and then think about like only money, and then sitting with the machine the whole day, not interested in talking to the next fellow sitting next to you, but you're only just playing with this thing. And then gradually the best part of human quality will be lost. So therefore, directly, indirectly, try to help others and also encourage others to do something constructive, beneficial in the society. That's called Dharma practice. Dharma practice is not how many times you move around the temple and sin by other people. Dharma practice is faithfully and sincerely doing the task given to you in your office. I sometimes tell my library staffs, if it's up to you whether you want to do it or not. If you want to do, all of us can do many great things. Even if you are cleaner, sweeper, if you do it with a wonderful attitude, I am so lucky, In Buddhism, one of the preparatory practices, nekhang chedur chela, kusung thuk je ten tamba. That means cleaning the surrounding where you are going to do your dharma practice. So clean the surrounding. So many visitors, people who come to study dharma here, they are not coming here to fight. They are coming here to study dharma. So respect these people, they are good people. They want to come and study, do something good. So with this realization, keep the environment clean. Then we have also constructed stupas. There are so many holy scriptures here. So it's good that I got this opportunity to clean, make the area, clean. And with that kind of it, then also cleaning is good for health. With all this understanding, if you do your job properly, you will live long. You will be healthier. You will be praised by other people. Even when you get retired, people will remember you. Oh, we really miss that person, you see. So each of us, whatever job we are doing, if you don't want to do that job, leave that job, do something, go for some other job. If there is no possibility for the timing, you have to do that job because it's not easy to get job, then at least, instead of sitting there lamenting and complaining and then getting the monthly salary, just, wasting time. No. You just, whatever be the opportunity, take best out of it. And you can do so many great things. And because you have started doing many great things, people say, oh, you are doing so good in this, please do this one also, There's more opportunity for promotion also, you see. So it's really, really important to be very honest and sincere to do the things that we are asked to do for the benefit of many other people. So therefore, the text says that this for a bodhisattva, this means giving up the bodhicitta, is the heaviest of all the infractions, violations of precepts. For should it ever happen, if such thing ever happens, the welfare of all will be weakened. Because you give up bodhicitta, meaning that you are not going to work for others. Then welfare of other people becomes weak. For example, if nobody takes care about your institution, this person doesn't care, this person doesn't care, the window is breaking, nobody cares about it, it is dusty, nobody cleans it, how can we enjoy things? Somebody has to come up and do things, you see. Somebody has to take the responsibility. You don't have to be asked to do these things actually. As a grown-up people, we should be always available, see what people need, what they are looking for, and then go and do those things without being asked. As I said earlier, when it comes to yourself, you don't have to ask, you do it automatically because this is something that must be done. So similarly, you should try to do those things which will make others happy, because after all, if you don't do anything which makes others happy, then what is the purpose of life? Very soon we are going to die. And then when you die, the only thing that you will be happy about is when you are alive, if you have done something good, if you help 30, 40 people, as I said earlier, if you have done something good, then that will live. Even if you have planted a tree which gives shadow to people, it will live. And hundreds of people will enjoy that shade, you see. So there are things like that which can really make your this life happy and your future life also happy. So not only it is bad if you give up bodhicitta, but even if you, as I said, even if you disrupt others' good activities, that also is very sinful. So verse number 9 reads, and should others for even a single moment hinder or obstruct their wholesome deeds. If somebody is doing wholesome or good deeds to others, to benefit others, and if you hinder or obstruct them even for a short moment, then you are also again weakening the welfare of other people. You are disrupting the well-being of other people. There will be no end to their rebirth in lower states. So if you do that, then the result will be being born in a lower state. Now, being born in a lower state doesn't mean to say that there is a hell waiting for you, and then there's somebody wielding a sword and ready to punish you and behead you. It's not like that. But you will start suffering in this very life. You will go lower and lower. Lower and lower in the sense that if you keep on doing bad things, if people will say, this fellow is useless, he's just sitting there doing nothing, everybody starts saying bad things, and you will become lower. And when you die also, you will die with regret and definitely go to a lower state. So that's the meaning. So don't think that lower means that in this life everything will be okay. It's only after you die then somebody comes and gives you the punishment. It's not like that. As Shantideva in his Bodhisattva, he clearly says, "Chaksik saki sui che, moso teda chili chung, tenda teda thamje chan diksami imbar tuber sung." Who has prepared this burning iron ground to toast us? Huh? Nobody has prepared things like that, hell or things like that. It's basically a state of your mind. When the state of your mind is such that it's disruptive, unhappy, angry, family members are fighting, then ordinarily also we say, oh, now I am experiencing hell. That's what we say. It's a kind of hell. This very psychophysical aggregate can become hell or heaven, a kind of hell and heaven right now. And if your mental state good, there is harmony, you are doing good, you are happy. You don't have to wait for nirvana enlightenment. You don't have to worry too much about it. There is a heaven. There's another saying which says that if you do the right thing, this psychophysical aggregate itself is the ship, the boat to nirvana, to enlightenment, because it's using this psychophysical aggregate that we can get liberated from samsara. If you do the right thing. If you do the wrong thing, then this psychophysical aggregate itself is the anchor that will drag you down to the bottom of the hell. Chungna tharbe tuzing ludi, majung nyewe tingdo ludi. So it's how we do things. The reason, then in the next verse number 10, he explains the reason. The reason that if you give a bodhicitta or hinder and obstruct others doing good, then you will suffer, you will go to lower state. The reason is that the reason is that if my being is impaired by destroying the joy of even one creature, then what need is there to mention destroying the joy of creatures vast as space? That means it is a common sense that even if you make the life of one person miserable, one creature miserable, people will say he is a bad man. There will be strong negative consequences. So this being the case, if you obstruct somebody developing bodhicitta and trying to help countless sentient beings, so in that case you are disrupting and obstructing somebody helping countless sentient beings. So it's common sense that you will have a very bad negative consequences. Then what need is there to mention destroying the joy of creatures vast as space? So that makes me sometimes think that, like His Holiness Dalai Lama, he is talking about cultivating bodhicitta, compassion, love, patience. With these universal messages, he is traveling all around the world, encouraging people, you see. But the Chinese leaders are saying he is a counter-revolutionary, traitor. He is the one who encouraged the self-immolation, saying all the bad things, false allegations. So I sometimes can't help thinking, oh, now if you have read Bodhicitta, Bodhicharyavatara, then you will get some idea. If you go on doing things, then where will you go? Go to the lower state. Go to the lower state. If you say bad things to the Bodhisattva, the negative consequences is immensible, unthinkable. So unfortunately, the ignorant leaders are doing that, you see. Next verse number 11 is saying that thus those who have the force of the awakening mind, which means those who have the force of the bodhicitta, as well as the force of falling from it. That means on one occasion you get very inspired and develop bodhicitta. You develop this wish to help many other sentient beings. Then on another occasion you give up the bodhicitta. So that is called force of falling from it. You fall from the practice of bodhicitta. So if you mix these two practices, positive practice of cultivating bodhicitta and the negative practice of giving it up and not practicing precepts, then you will stay revolving within cycle existence and for a long time are hindered from reaching the bodhisattva levels. It's like something, you're doing something good today, doing something bad tomorrow. So in the true sense of the term, you will never make proper progress. There will be no steady development. So all the higher, the achievement of all the higher, Buddhist spiritual levels is not possible. Okay? You do something good today, then it's nullified tomorrow by doing something bad. Back to square one. Then you do something good, then you do something bad, you fall back. So there will be no progress at all. So therefore it is important to take the bodhisattva vow, cultivate bodhicitta, and then practice the precepts, and not to transgress them, not to give them up, so that you are able to move steadily forward and actualize the spiritual paths, the path of accumulation, application, seeing, meditation, no more learning, and so forth, and the 10 spiritual grounds. If you don't do that, then for a long time are hindered from reaching the bodhisattva bhumis, the spiritual levels. So therefore in the next verses he is asking you to especially careful about the precepts, the trainings that you need to undertake. So in the next first verse says that you should be careful about removing the faults, removing the wrongdoings. Therefore, just as I have promised, I shall respectfully accord my actions. If from now on I make no effort, I shall descend to lower and lower states. That means you have made a promise. Having made a promise, if you don't practice it with joy, respect, with happiness, because making effort in Buddhism means doing something with happiness in the mind, with delight in the mind. And if you don't do that, and if you don't make the needed effort out of laziness, by the way, laziness means not just not doing something. Laziness, there are many different types of laziness. One, yes, laziness means not doing, as we normally understand. Two, laziness means postponement. I have to do this, but not today. Today I have to watch a movie, and I will practice tomorrow. Tomorrow comes and then you say, oh, I can't do this because I have to go to a party next day. Oh, next day, Sunday, okay, I have to go up. In this way, if you postpone, keep on postponing the positive practices, that's called laziness or postponement. If you want to postpone the bad things. Don't postpone the good things. Another kind of laziness is saying that, oh, this is a wonderful practice, that must be done. but I am not intelligent, I am not intelligent, I am not clever, I can't make effort, I can't do this. I know it's very important, but I can't do this. Which is called laziness of low self-esteem. You look down upon yourself, you defame yourself, you discourage yourself. That's also called laziness. So there are different types of lazinesses. Another kind of laziness is, yes, I have to do this, but first I will read this novel instead of the Dharma practice. First I will finish this novel. First I will go to play basket or something, If you do what is less important first and postpone the one that is good, that's also laziness. So make sure that you do not allow this laziness to creep in and hinder your practice. One of the Buddhist teachings says that whoever has one laziness has not even one quality. That is not literally true, but it basically means laziness is a big problem. So you need to do these spiritual practices. When? Right now. Right from today. Not when you have finished all other worldly activities. In the Tibetan society, we have people who first get married, have many children, and then they become old, nothing much to do. And then they say, I'll become a monk. Geshe says. And His Holiness actually kind of scolded that by saying that the most important thing and the most difficult and important precious practice, Dharma practice, is taken so lightly that can be done by a person who cannot do worldly activities. We have this tendency even in our society. Sometimes when the child is not so clever, then they would say, send him to the monastery. This is really bad omen. Inauspicious beginning. If you look at how the Tibetan kings in the past selected the translators, they selected the translators right at the time when they were extremely young, small kids actually. They were doing a kind of IQ test, how eloquent they are, how sharp and clever they look, And then they pick up these people and give the Dharma training. So the real Dharma practice you can do when you are physically young and fresh, your channels, your brain, your nerves, when they are agile, when they are soft, when they are flexible, then you can do meditation, you can practice all those things. When you are old, your eyesight is failing, you have to wear thick eyeglasses, and your memory is fading, you can just push yourself just like an old worn-out car, But it's better than nothing, honestly speaking. You won't achieve much, you see. So it's really wrong ways of doing things, you see. Yes, I understand that just by doing Dharma practice, you are not going to get the food, clothing, money. That's our concern, you see. And it's a true concern, genuine concern. I understand that. And that's one reason not many people come to study Buddhism also. I know that. But still, you see, no problem. You do your regular work to get your salary or whatever. But there are so much other occasions and opportunities for you to do your Dharma practice. Even if you are, say, a staff, government official, you work from 9 to 5. Most of the time it's 9 to 5. And what are you going to do with the rest of the time? Okay, I'll have to look after my children, this, that. You have so many excuses, but still you will get a lot of time. Then we have Saturdays, Sundays, and then public holidays. So many occasions are there. But on those occasions you have so many other things to do, that then the Dharma practice, which means again laziness. Laziness in the form of choosing what is inferior as more important. And many people, most of us do that. And I remember very well when His Holiness was teaching Mahamudra in the temple. I was then not his translator, I was just attending the teaching. he gave this teaching to a group of people from France. So the main table was occupied by these people from France. So I was sitting in the veranda outside. So there was one French lady who asked this question to His Holiness during the question-answer session. She asked, His Holiness, your teaching is so good, so wonderful, but in the West we are so busy, we don't get time. Then His Holiness answered, whether you want to do religious practice or not, it's your freedom. You're free not to do or not to do. He gave this answer first, then I said, His Holiness, you're a little bit, blunt today. Then of course he was not blunt. He explained it by saying, whether you want to do any religious practice or not, it's up to you. It's your choice. And if you want to do a religious practice, which religion is your choice? And then having chosen a practice, a religion, having made the commitment, vow that I'm going to do this practice, you have to find time. Look at the soccer players. Look at the musicians. They always find time for those things because they are interested in it. Even in the West, it's a common sight to see that people who say they are very busy, but still, they get an opportunity to grab a cup of coffee and, hamburger or something to eat, and while traveling they can eat, drink, because this is something they have to do. Similarly, you'll get time for many other things. For this practice also you will get time. So therefore, normally when we say I have not much time, you are saying I am not interested. You are basically saying you are not very interested. So therefore, I cannot push you and say get interested. I can't push you. You see. So all I can say is that you need to study a little bit, think a little bit, and then see for yourself whether it's really going to benefit you or not, benefit others or not. And then compare it to many other human activities. Which one is more beneficial, more valuable? Compare it. Take some time, think a little bit. Then if you are able to see this is really beneficial, then you have to practice it. You have to study it, you have to meditate on it. If you look at the story of the Buddha, how much pain he has taken. When he was meditating, of course he was practicing for so many countless eons, but in that one lifetime story also, when he undertook this 6 years great hardship doing the practice, there were occasions where he felt that his head is splitting into countless pieces. He was forcing himself so much, worked so hard, and as a result he was able to achieve that. This is a good example. It's not just dharma practice. Whatever you want to achieve in education, in health, any other activity, unless you devote some time and work hard, you will not reach where you want to reach. So it's important to give some time, at least to start with. Sit quietly, because one of the biggest modern problem is we don't know how to stay alone, and we also don't know how to live with others. It's a modern problem. You have to do one of these things. Either you should know how to live harmoniously with others, or you should know how to live alone. And of course, at the end of the day, you have to know how to live alone, how to go alone. We came alone in this world, and we'll go alone from this world. So in between, there's not much point to make so much fuss, So at least in the morning, sit quietly for just few minutes. After you get up, sit a few minutes quietly, appreciate that you are human life, you have got this human life, and make a commitment that you will do something good in the day. Then at the end of the day, again reflect back and review what kind of life you lived. If you wasted the life, then regret, repent, and make a promise, tomorrow I will improve. Whether it's Buddhist study or any other study, make this commitment. Then you will be able to see the result. Even within a short time, you can see the result. And the amount of peace that you get by being alone and reflecting and going within yourself cannot be matched by any other activities. So try this. You call it meditation or whatever you want to call it. Sit quiet and reflect back a little bit what is coming in your mind. What are you planning? Things like that. So be in touch with yourself. That is what I am saying. Be in touch with yourself. In keeping in touch with others, there are so many modern machines. Mobile phones, iPhones, iPads, so many things. All these equipments are there to keep in touch with others. But nobody has invented a machine to keep in touch with yourself. The mobile phone is useless to call yourself. If you call yourself using the mobile, it's a little bit funny and stupid, It's interesting if you look like this, So the only way to keep in touch with yourself is inner reflection, meditation. And if you keep in touch with yourself, it is by keeping in touch with yourself, you will experience this healing experience. Healing experience. Most of us feel lonely, unhappy because you are not in touch with yourself. When you don't know how to keep in touch with yourself, how can you keep in touch with others? So meditation basically means remaining in the home, inside. It's your home. As I pointed out yesterday, you have kept your home locked, your house locked. Never once came in, remove the dust. So do some cleaning, do some inner laundry. Then you can see how much satisfaction you are getting. Even your facial reflection, radiance can change. So keeping in touch with yourself is very, very important. Understanding your emotions. So this verse was saying that if you don't give up negative acts and infractions, then you will have to go to negative state of existence. You will go lower and lower. Yeah. Then next verse is in response to those thinking of people who think that why do I have to work so hard? If I have to work very hard, then what is the job of the Buddhas? Buddhas are said to be very compassionate. So even if I don't work very hard, they will take care of me. They are omniscient, they are omnipotent. So they will look after me. Many people think like that. Okay? Many people think like that, especially believers in God. God will take care. Bhagwan jane, Khuda jane. That's a very common phrase that you will hear in big cities. So many people think like that. They are fond of imagining a fatherly figure somewhere they are taking care of you, So if you are thinking like that, then this is the response in this verse number 13. Although for the benefit of every creature, countless Buddhas have passed by. Yes, he is saying you are right. There are countless Buddhas. And the job of this countless Buddha is to benefit every sentient being, every creature. But I was not an object of their care not because they don't have the compassion, but because of my own laziness and mistakes. The Buddha's compassion is like a hook. The hook is there all the time. But in order to pull, there should be also a ring. If there is no ring, the hook is already there. So how can the Buddha can help, you see? So you need to also work hard, purify your negative emotions and prepare this ring so that the Buddha's compassion can reach you. The moon is there in the space all the time, but it does not get reflected clearly in all the waters, because many of the waters or seas or oceans, they are polluted, they are dirty, they are covered with mud and things like that. Then the reflection cannot come there. It's not because of the moon. It is because of the turbidity, the pollution of the water. So therefore, if from your own side, if you don't make the effort, the Buddhas can't do anything. I have shown you the path to Nirvana. Nirvana is up to you. The Buddha never said that you just close your eye and pray for me and I will remove all your sufferings and problems. He never said. One of the Jain Roshi, he wrote a book. Right in the beginning of this book, he says, if you meet the Buddha on the road, kill him. He was writing that to say that many people are creating a personality cult of the Buddha. They don't practice the teaching of the Buddha. They glorify just the Buddha, which is against the wish of the Buddha. The Buddha never wanted to talk about his personal greatness. He wanted his followers to follow his teaching. So therefore the Buddha said, I have shown you the path to Nirvana. Nirvana is up to you. I am your teacher, you have to act. These are the sayings in the sutra by Buddha himself. So unless you do, nobody can help you. For example, take the case of our Tibetans. We need supporters for the Tibetan struggle. Yes, we need. But if you simply wait for the supporters and if you don't do anything, how can they help you? And not only that, now more and more it is becoming clear that unless we the Tibetans work hard, educate ourselves, make rich, become rich, unless we work hard and do these things, nobody can help us in the true sense of the term. Here and there people will come and help you, of course, a little bit. But at the end of the day, it's up to you where you will be able to, whether you will be able to stand or you will fall. That's law of nature. This law of nature. So that's the meaning. Although for the benefit of every creature, countless Buddhas have passed by, I was not an object of their care because of my own mistake. Sanje thame chumbe matuwe marunduki nigdundowachi. It's because of our unruly nature that countless Buddhas could not tame us. So this is what we have done in the past. And if you continue to act like this, as you have done in the past, then again and again shall I undergo suffering in unhappy realms. So it's basically saying it's very powerful, For example, if you are suffering from particular addiction in the past, then you are being told, now see, you got addicted in this, you suffered so much in the past, but still if you keep on taking this hashish or ganja, so we need to give up this addiction to the afflictive emotions. If you don't do that, you will continue to suffer. So it's actually challenging you by saying that it's now up to you whether you want to continue to suffer or not. Choice is yours. There's nothing much I can do. And if I continue to act like this, again and again, shall I undergo suffering in unhappy realms? And in unhappy realms, getting sick, bondage, laceration, that means cutting, chopping into pieces. Like for example, even just in the human world, how many are suffering from all kind of strange diseases? AIDS, cancer, so many new diseases, Ebola, many diseases which we have never heard before. There was another one whose name also I don't remember, the one that happened recently in South Korea. What was it? MERS something? MERS or something, yeah. So this kind of horrible diseases are there. And many of these diseases are our own human creation, our own creation. So that's the result of your wrongdoing, polluting the environment, polluting the water, killing so many insects, killing so many animals. Huh? And the shedding of blood. We don't think about these things. And still, if you remain stubborn and say, "Oh, I don't care. I don't care. I want to enjoy life," whatever that means. What is the meaning of enjoying life? Whatever that means. If you say, "Oh, I don't care about this thing called Buddhist or spiritual practice. I want to enjoy life." And when we are healthy, not suffering right now, then we are very bold. I don't care about Dharma. But when you get problem, difficulties, then you are not sure where to turn to. Then you come for divination. Then you come for a puja. Then you go around the temple, I've seen this many times. When you are young, not married, you don't care much about religious practices. When you get married and then have 1 or 2 children, you seem to be frequenting the temple much more than before. You see? I mean, this is life. It's helping, you see. It's helping. Honestly, it's helping, you see. Because these religious practices help you go within and reflect within. Not just expecting things from outside. So therefore, don't be unnecessarily bold, because he's saying in the next verse, if you become unnecessarily bold and if you say, "I don't care, I want to enjoy life," things like that, then you need to remember these things, You need to remember these things. The opportunity that you have today, you will hardly get next time. So next verse number 15 says, if the arising of the Tathagata, arising basically means a time when there is Buddha, a time when you are able to develop some kind of faith to the Buddhist teaching, a time when you have obtained this precious human body, a time when you are able to fit to cultivate virtue. These are very scarce, very difficult. Don't take it lightly to be able to born in a place where you can receive teaching of His Holiness Dalai Lama, where you can read all these teachings of the Buddha, where you obtain this precious human life, not only human life, but where your sense faculties are intact, and not only that, you also have a faith. These are very difficult to find. So you must appreciate your present status of having obtained these opportunities. And if you neglect and ignore this and waste this, when will they be born again? When do you think you will get this again? Do you think you will be born as human life, as a human being again and again? Even if you are born as a human being, but if you are born in a very barbaric land, where there is only fighting and killing, this is not a myth. It's happening right now in many parts of the world. Day and night people are fighting and killing each other. If you are born in such a place, even just in this human world, there are millions who are dying of starvation. Even at this time, right now, there are 60 million refugees not having a proper place to stay. And countless people are losing their life every day on the boat when they try to go to some other country. This is a regular day-to-day phenomenon happening right now. So it's important sometimes, compare your fate with many of these unfortunate, less privileged people, so that you are able to appreciate your life and do something good, do something positive. And therefore, I always tell people that you must be very happy about yourself, your state. So when I say this, sometimes people say, "Oh, Geshe-la," especially in not so well-off countries, when I give this talk, then they say, "Geshe-la, I have nothing to be so happy about." So immediately they measure in terms of how much wealth they have. Immediately, this is interesting human way of thinking. They immediately, the yardstick is how much money they have. So they say, "Geshe-la, we have nothing. We are poor people." Then I said, "Okay, in terms of wealth, you may be poor, but you are a human being. Have you appreciated that? You are not a dog. You are not a street dog. You are not a cow." Some people come to me and ask me, "Geshe-la, can you please teach me meditation?" They want me to teach them formal meditation, which all the teachers teach. But I tell them, "You want meditation? Okay. You meditate half of the day today. You meditate that you are a cow." That's my teaching. You meditate that you are a cow or a dog or things like that. Sincerely, genuinely, you think you are not human being, you are a cow. So where are you going to eat now? Where are you going to sleep? It's possible. In the Buddhist text it says, right now you are a human being, but the death may be here, which means death and life, the distance between life and death is just this breath. When you breathe out and could not breathe in, that's called death. That's called next life. To reach next life is not very, you don't have to buy an expensive air ticket, Just breathe out and could not breathe in, that is the end of the story. You have already reached afterlife. So, next moment you may be a cow, maybe a dog. So when you compare your life with these other poor people and animals, then you will appreciate, "Oh my God, I am so lucky, Then you stop complaining unnecessarily. Otherwise, we are always complaining, "I don't have this, I don't have that." So much complaint, you see. So I tell them, you thank yourself that you are not a cow, you are a human being. Then among human beings also, you have both the eyes intact, both the hands intact. Don't take it for granted. How many hundreds and thousands of people who don't have eyesight? How many hundreds and thousands of people who are legless? So here we are sitting with the two eyes, but useless eye. Two hands, not helping others, and misusing the eye, looking negatively, making eye making your eye like a snake. Because when you get angry, your eye becomes like a snake. If you smile and nice to others, your eye also becomes like the eye of a deer, slender and nice. So that's the thing, you see. There's so much to appreciate, So then with this realization, then you make a promise that I now appreciate, I have this eyes intact, legs intact, hands intact. So I will use my eye properly, use my language properly, use my hands properly. That's the purpose of having hands, that is the purpose of having eye, and so forth. There's so much you have to be happy about. So when I explain like this, then they say, "Yes, Geshe-la, true. I'm really lucky," you see. Oh. So we stop here. And you can do, if you get some time, then reflect and meditate how precious and rare this human life is. Since it is raining heavily outside, if you have one or two questions, we can deal with one or two questions and expect that the rain will stop. Any questions? Yeah. No to di yorbe di khabar yomarwa. Kandes yakwe nge khomar da charbadi. La. Oh di. They have na digro. Come here. It's a good exercise, you know. Yeah, this is good because others can also hear. They'll do the degree.
Due to time constraint, I take this opportunity to speak, to use my broken English.
Yeah.
So initially, I, on the behalf of all the devout students, would like to say immense of thanks for your wonderful and practical teaching, which really enlightened us how to deal with the negative or destructive emotion and how to habituate it with the positive action and day-to-day practice and so forth. So my question is that actually we all know that Buddha has already been attained the Buddhahood for the sake of other sentient beings.
Yes.
And he has immense of immeasurable love, compassion towards others. He even breathing for the welfare of other sentient beings. But I was confused that he said one of his close disciples that his name is Anand, and he said that Anand, you need not to grieve. You need not to grieve over someone who is languishing or suffering from the consequence of their own karma. So Buddha himself is okay because he has a lot of omniscience and everything. But we ordinary people, how to discern to whether help or not, whether they are suffering their own fate or not. So how you?
Yeah, I actually explained this. Yeah, I kind of explained this yesterday also. There is a Tibetan saying which says, "Simjin leji narwa lakun gawo nyangi machichik." Which means that when sentient beings are tormented or afflicted as a result of their own karma, then Anand, you should not lament. So which means, if you look at the teaching of the Buddha, it's a very pragmatic teaching. As I explained earlier, he always says that do those things which is beneficial and don't do those things which is not beneficial. So Ananda's bereaving at the suffering or problem of the Buddha is not going to do any benefit to the one who is suffering. So therefore he is saying, whatever is there, it's the result of karma. Your bereaving, your feeling sad, your crying and shouting will not only help, but it will instead harm. It will disturb. So that's not the solution. As I said yesterday also, that if somebody is in deep tragedy and you also join that group and feel, sad and cry and wave, then you sing together. You will not be able to help. So it's not just shedding crocodile tears. It's not just weeping. It's not just being stupid and foolish like many others, that you can help others. If somebody is drowning, then you should know how to swim and not to get drowned, rather than be with him and get drowned together. So therefore, it is not by drowning together that you will be able to help him, but it is by swimming, above the water, that you will be able to help that person. So there's the intelligent way of helping others. The ordinary way of helping others is the stupid way of helping others. So therefore, His Holiness Dalai Lama also says, if you want to be selfish, be wisely selfish. wisely selfish. Even in terms of benefiting one's own purpose, it has to be wise, wisdom, far-sighted, not the stupid way. And then also on a bigger reason, if you understand the law of nature, then there is nothing to weave. Like for example, this meeting together, we sit together for 1 hour, and we meet each other, and then after 1 hour we separate. Then after doing this separation, if we all start weeping, oh now you are going, we are getting separated, I'm so sad. If you weep, then people say, stupid, what, he's acting, We met just 1 hour and we know that after 1 hour we are going to get separated. So why so much, sadness? You understand that? Likewise, the other meeting in the form of brothers, sisters, husband, wife, same kind of meeting. That meeting is for separation. It's like this meeting. The difference is only duration probably. A little bit longer time, maybe there to help each other. Apart from that, the nature is same. So if you are somebody who has understood this meaning, that meeting itself is for separation, then you will do two good things. One, because you already know that we are going to get separated soon, so you will be very nice, just as you are very nice to me right now. You are listening as if I have something to say, you are making me happy, you see. As if I have great things to say, you are making me happy, and I am also trying to make you happy, saying good things, Because we know we are together for 1 hour, so why we fight? You see, why should we say bad things? So you will live nicely when you are living together. That's number one benefit. The second, when that person gets separated in the form of death and so forth, you have nothing to worry, nothing to feel sad, because you have lived so well, And you have lived so well in the sense, not only you have not harmed that person, but you must have helped that person do good things. And as a result, if there is a future life, that person will take good rebirth. So nothing to worry. So when we don't have this understanding, then when we are living together, we are not so nice to each other. We are constantly fighting each other, you see. And when that person dies, then you shed your crocodile tear. Then after that crocodile tear lasts for 1 week or 2 weeks, then you get another husband, another wife. I mean, there's a lot of stories to say, you see. So this is ordinary human way of suffering, you see. So the Buddha's teaching says, you are unnecessarily suffering. So basically the Buddha is saying that you are unnecessarily suffering. Please stop this unnecessary suffering. If you develop a little bit of insight, you can come out of many of these unnecessary sufferings and headaches that you are having right now. So that's why knowledge is important, wisdom is important. One more question, then the rain will stop. I'm joking, yeah. One more question, then I'll stop. Yes?
Can I say it from
Yeah,
here?
you're quite loud, I think.
Geshe, you've seen people in the West who are very, very thin but who won't eat. And there have been people here who are full of parasites but won't take antibiotics, to kill the parasites for Buddhist reasons, but they almost died. We've seen addicts drain whole families and deal with mental illness, and we call it the power of the victim in many times, because everyone gets anxious for them. Is there any form of wisdom that can reach and help that person without putting anyone down? I hear what you're saying, but I sometimes think there's a key to reaching them. Instead of them changing their sexuality by surgery, maybe there's another key to make them happy.
So you've like two questions?
No, my question is there a key to reach those people, to stop the people around them going down?
To stop?
To stop the concern of the people around them. Those situations are very kind of draining for everybody else around them. They're quite powerful. Is there a key?
Those people who think negatively, you are.
I feel that sometimes people who are suffering have tremendous power of negativity to bring other people down.
Yeah.
Is there a key
I
to
got
release
your point.
yourself and to help them at the same time?
Yeah, I don't know about one magic solution, but as I said earlier, there is no push button enlightenment. But just as we see the power of negative thinking, negative doing, similarly we should, and even much more than that, we should appreciate the power of good act, good doing. That number one is very, very important. For example, if you watch a television or read a newspaper, there are not many good news there. There's one, bomb blast in Iraq and 50 people being killed in Syria, flood in Bihar, and all those kind of things are there. So by reading those headlines and what comes out in the newspaper and television, people sometimes think that human nature is negative, destructive, bad, hopeless. So that is absolutely wrong. And I always give the example, like for example, if you take the case of say New Delhi, it's a city with say nearly 20 million people or something like that. So in that, maybe like 100 or so people may be dying in one day under different situations, circumstances. But hundreds and thousands are born, number one. Number two, millions are being taken care of in the family, in the hospital. So the love and compassion and care that is being shown and shared is much more overwhelming than the news, the bad news that we see and hear. This bad news hit headlines because they are against human nature. So we are shocked and it becomes news. But that does not mean to say that there is a bigger negative presence. So one, we have to have that kind of more broader picture. Then second, as I answered somebody also, in your life you will meet many strange people who are draining, who are always pessimistic, who are thinking negatively. But one thing, it's impossible to change all of them overnight also. It's a fact that we have to accept. So what we need to do is, whatever may be the situation or the place, that I for one will be the source of positive thinking, positive vibration. That one has to always keep, and even if you like share your smile, share your good work, it will have its ripple effect to other people, including those people who thinking negatively. Just to please them, just to please them, don't join them and then encouraging, oh, you are right, that the society is not good, people are not good, Many people are fond of joining those bad people. And then these bad people, they also think, oh yeah, I have many supporters now, Then they get emboldened, which is really very, very unhealthy, very unhealthy. You don't have to criticize immediately, but in a very skillful way, make friendship with those people, instead of straight away saying, oh, what you are doing is bad, what you are thinking is bad. Instead of that, just be tactful and skillful and say, can we go for a cup of tea? See, just go for a cup of tea and talk about some lighter things, and then gradually you will get an opening, a ventilation through which you can relate to his soul and then make a little bit of impact every time, and then they'll change, you see. And for some people, there are some people who are really lonely and miserable and saying bad things because they never got any encouragement from other people. They were not born and brought up in that situation, you see. So therefore, it's really important as much as possible to create that positive environment everywhere we go. as somebody rightly said, that it is better to light a candle than curse the darkness. I mean, when the light goes off, we can all sit here and say, oh, this damn light, All of us are very good in that. Everyone says, why the light, Not even one person will get up and light a candle. That's the problem in the society, you see. So instead of sitting there cursing the darkness, get up and light a candle. So something like that. I don't know I'm answering your question or not. It's something like that. Then the other question that you asked, kind of other question, that some people are like suffering from certain diseases but still not taking treatment, thinking that this will kill the virus. That is stupid. That's based on wrong knowledge. We had this problem in the very beginning when Tibetans were giving farmland to cultivate. They spoke even directly to His Holiness. His Holiness, we can't do farming because we will kill so many insects, you see. If you read the story of the Tibetan settlement, it's very, very interesting. But then gradually, of course, there are things you can do, there are things you can't do, So you have to be pragmatic. You're not going to kill intentionally, you're looking for insects and killing. You're not doing that, you see. And if you go to the extreme, then you can't live. Because if I breathe, also some insects may be coming in. If I see it, also some tiny insects maybe I'm sitting there. So Buddha never asks you to do something which is impossible for you to do. Intentionally, you should not harm others. As much as possible, be careful. So like that. Okay. Thank you. Now it looks like the rain is more or less stopped. Thank you very much.